Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Brainy Boomer Lecture Series. We're so very happy you've all joined us today. In 2007, the McGill University Research Center for Studies in Aging, or the MCSH Education Committee, started the Brainy Boomer Lecture Series in order to suggest practical steps to both improve and maintain brain health, as well as to promote healthy lifestyle choices amongst the most populous generation in history. The MCSH Education Committee, which was founded in 1996, has three main objectives: identifying education needs of healthcare providers, seniors, caregivers, and the public, and to develop responses to meet some of those needs; to enhance the positive image of the aging process by addressing stereotypes and myths about aging; and finally, the dissemination of research on aging. Dr. Patricia Belcourt is an assistant professor at the School of Physical and Occupational Therapy at McGill University, and she is affiliated with the Centre de Recherche de l'Institut Universitaire de Gériatrie de Montréal. She earned her bachelor's degree in occupational therapy from Dom Bosco Catholic University in Brazil. She completed a PhD in rehabilitation sciences at the University of Florida in the occupational therapy department. The focus of her PhD was smart technology, aging, and cognition. Lastly, her postdoctoral work focused on cognitive aging and which was also completed at the University of Florida in the Department of Clinical and Health Psychology. Before continuing, we would like to remind you to please mute your microphone on Zoom, and that if you have any questions, please wait until the end of the conference, or you could write them down in the chat box on Zoom. And now I'd like to invite Dr. Belcourt to start her presentation, Engaging Our Brains to Promote Well-Being in Later Life.
Thank you, Kathleen. Can you hear me well?
Yep, perfect.
Yes, okay. Thank you for the invitation, for being here. Thank you everyone for being here for this lecture. And today, So today, what we're gonna try to answer is this question: how can I keep my brain sharp? So we're gonna focus in the next hour in trying to find ways that we keep our brain sharp, in trying to reflect on how we can make that happen. So with the increase in the incidence of Alzheimer's disease and dementia, we have also seen an increase in research in cognitive training, in brain stimulation, in ways that we can keep our brain sharp so we can be independently as long as possible and doing our activities, doing our occupations the way we want. So I'd say that in the past 2 decades, there has been really a boom in all this research to try to understand ways to stay sharp. We have learned a lot in the past 2 decades. We have learned a lot about the characteristics of these trainings, of these programs that can help us stay sharp. There is still a lot that we don't know, still a lot that we need to learn. But there are 2 things that I think it's the message that I'd like to convey today. It's part of the message. The first one is that there is no one-size-fits-all approach. So there is not one thing that I can tell you to do that would help you to keep your brain sharp. So I'm sorry if I'm going to disappoint you by not pointing you out to a very specific program or a very specific intervention. Because what we have been learning in the past few years is that the interventions that works best are the interventions that are multi-component, so multi-component approach. So combining different approaches, different ways to keep our brain sharp. And that's what I'm going to focus today in this lecture. So what I'd like to do is, instead of really focusing on specific ways to keep our brain sharp, I think that what we have learned in the past years is that we need to learn how to engage our brains. So I'd like to focus on this question now: how can I engage my brain? And this is what we're going to spend some time talking about. So even though when we talk about stimulating your brain, engaging your brain, we usually think about these computer-based activities that are there. This is one of the example of the brain cue, which was the posit science. And I'm sure that some of you might be familiar with all these computer games, with all these trainings that are out there. So this is one form of engaging our brains, but there are other forms that we can use, and we need to use in combination if we want to stay sharp. So there's also, some research that has focused on singing or socializing with friends. That's also another way to engage our brains. Learning how to play an instrument or learning a new language. So all these are ways that we can engage our brains, and we're gonna spend some time talking about today. As an occupational therapist, I really like to take this more holistic approach to the person. So I try to think about different ways that we can engage our brains, and really doing our everyday activities, like doing things in our everyday lives that can engage our brains. So this presentation, what I did, I frame it with the lifestyle redesign intervention. And this is a very holistic approach. It's an occupational-based approach. And we're not going to spend time talking specifically about this intervention, but I have chosen some aspects of these interventions that can engage our brains and keep our brain sharp. Just a small note before I keep going. I was invited about 2 years ago to give a similar lecture at the Center for Studies on Aging, and I have updated the lecture, but maybe if you were there 2 years ago, maybe some of these components might be familiar to you, but we're going to reflect on them again. So what's this lifestyle redesign? So when you're talking about this lifestyle redesign, what is this about? So it's an occupational therapy program that was developed to promote well-being among older adults through engagement in occupations. So engagement in things that we already do in our everyday lives. But what is it different than other interventions? These interventions, it really takes a very personalized approach. And when we talk about personalized approach, it goes back to along the lines that there's no one size fits all approach. Because even though we share some commonalities during our everyday life, we are very different from each other in also different levels. So if we want to have this, stay sharp, maybe it's going to work differently for different people. But what we are going to see today, it's really a combination of these approaches. So in these studies, they found that people that really have this engagement in occupations, they had better scores in bodily pain, so they had less pain, improved social functioning, improved mental health, improved mental functioning, and life satisfaction. And that's what we are going to focus on, which is also going to include the more traditional brain stimulation, the cognitive stimulation that we usually talk about. So we're going to focus on 4 different topic areas. So the first one is engaging in meaningful occupations. So these are things that we do in our everyday lives that are meaningful to us, that we feel satisfied. So for sure, in our everyday lives, we need to engage in things that we are not very happy about doing, that it's not really meaningful, but it's important and we need to do it. But along the same time, we need to be able to engage in things that make us happy, that make us satisfied. And we're gonna touch base on that a little bit. Maintaining social relationships, that's also very important, and a little challenging in the current situation that we are living. And then participating in cognitively stimulating activities, which is more the traditional approaches that we know. And there are also other components that we are going to briefly talk about them. So the first one is engaging in meaningful occupations. So why should we engage in meaningful occupations? Because it improves, it promotes well-being, life satisfaction, and can engage our brains. However, in our day-to-day life, sometimes we do things that are very automatic to us. We rarely stop and think about our occupations. What are we doing that make us happy or that make us unhappy? So I'd like to take this moment to just do some reflections on our own occupations and maybe ways that we can still be engaged in these occupations. So first, I'd like you to think about occupations that are meaningful to you in your everyday life. What are the things that you do that make you satisfied, that make you happy? And it's going to be different things for different people. It could be cooking. Some people, they're going to be happy cooking a meal and entertaining friends. Some others are going to be very stressful to do that. For some people, walking in the park is meaningful. Driving, reading a book, doing a sport. So just think about what's really meaningful to you. And then as we grow old or in our everyday lives, we face barriers that impedes our participation in these meaningful occupations. It can be physical, it can be, cognitive, maybe, we become a little slower. We are cooking a recipe, we are preparing dinner, but it just takes more time. So what are really the obstacles that make us, that's like, or a barrier that impede us to do these activities that are meaningful to us, these activities that make us happy? And then what's our attitudes when we find these obstacles that we find? Do we overcome these obstacles, or you just give up on your occupation? So do I think about strategies to still stay engaged in these occupations? And this is the message that I want to bring here. When we talk about engagement, when we talk about stimulation in your brain, it also includes doing the things that we like doing. And sometimes it becomes harder. Sometimes it might take more time to do it. But am I still able to engage? Do I feel that there are some strategies that I can put in place that can help me to stay motivated, to stay satisfied with these occupations? If for some reason I cannot do this activity, this occupation before, can I replace it to another activity? Can I find new ways to participate and do things that are meaningful to us? So, and also even our basic occupations, for example, cooking, can I try a new recipe that's maybe a little bit harder? Can I push myself a little bit to do things that I need to learn? I need to learn a new recipe, I need to learn a new routine. And this also keeps our brain sharp. It also keeps our brain engaged. So I cannot talk about just doing a computer-based training, doing some exercise on the computer, without this other aspect, which is my day-to-day life, my occupations, and finding ways that we can overcome these barriers that impede us sometimes to do these activities. So the second one is maintaining social relationships. Why should we maintain a social relationship? So there has been a lot of studies that has shown that social engagement, social relationships is associated with greater life satisfaction, longevity, decreased risk of dementia, reduced level of functional decline when performing everyday tasks. So there are a lot of reasons why we need to keep our social relationships. However, as we grow older, sometimes these relationships, it changes due to the death of a family members, friends moving, we move, have a disability, but we need to find new ways to still keep this engagement for as long as possible. Can I find some volunteer opportunity? Can I take new roles into the community? So this is also ways that we can also engage our brain, and that's also important to us. And one note that's important to pay attention to is not that, I've learned that social participation, volunteering is gonna keep my brain sharp. So I go there, but I'm not satisfied with that. That doesn't really make me happy. So I go to do it. So it doesn't really work. So what works is really to make this satisfaction, to find things still that are meaningful to us, even in later life. I like this program, and the Experience Corps program, which is a program that can illustrate this a little bit. And it was a program that was developed in the United States, which is a community-based program that incorporates the experience and wisdom of older adults to improve academic and behavioral outcomes of children from public schools. So what happened is these older adults, they went to elementary schools to tutor students who were poor readers or have problems with math. So it was a volunteer-based program. So what was interesting is that they found improvement for both older adults and for the children as well. So for older adults, they saw decreased disability in mobility and everyday activities, decreased falls, decreased memory loss, and generativity engagement, so the engagement with the children. And also the benefits for children, which was higher score on standardized reading tests, decrease in classroom misbehavior. So this is also, ways that you can increase, your cognitive skills, they improve engaging brain stimulation by doing an activity that, again, is not just sitting in a computer and doing some form of training. So it's another form of engagement. However, during this COVID pandemic, the maintaining the social relationships, it becomes a challenge, and we started to rely on technology to do that. So just the fact that you are here trying to learn a new thing, that you are open to learn a new thing, it's already another form of engaging our brains. For some of you, you might have been familiar with technology, might have been familiar with Zoom. For some of you, maybe you had to learn this new technology, so you have learned something new, so you have also engaged your brain. So more and more, and in this new situation, we need to rely on these technologies. And how is our attitudes towards learning all these technologies? Can I learn? Am I open to learn these? Am I curious to learn about new things? So these are all ways to engage our brains. So the third one, it's what I think it's a bit more traditional approach to stimulate our brain, to use these cognitive stimulating activities. And this is a research that I found that in the past 20 years, it has just increased a lot. There has been a lot of these computer training games. There are a lot of things in the market that you might know. There is, video games that you can just play on your computer, on your tablet. So it's harder to know exactly what's going to, what's going to benefit me, what's not going to benefit me. And again, there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. But what I'm going to show you is some of these activities or these trainings that we have been conducted in the lab or other colleagues have been doing. So why we should participate in these stimulating activities? It can reduce the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. It improves cognitive skills. So there are already a lot of research that has been done that it has shown that these cognitive stimulating activities or these trainings, it improves some memory skills, it improves attention skills, and so on. So how do they work? So they build a form of resistance in the brain. So they create new connections in the brain. So the brain is better able to cope when the disease, when it appears. But the question is, can we build this resistance at any age? Or do we think, am I too old that I cannot, build this resistance? So we can actually build this resistance at any age. So we still have the ability to learn until we are very old. what happens is that sometimes the way we learn, it might become a little bit different. So maybe we might, it takes more time for us to learn. We need more repetition as we learn, but we can still learn. We have research and colleagues that have shown that even in early stages of Alzheimer's disease, we can still learn. If we have the right strategies, we can still learn. And this is a very important thing that we need to keep in mind. We need to keep learning. So there are some types of trainings that has been developed to improve some cognitive skills. Some of these trainings, they are really specific to improve memory. Some of the training to improve attention, to improve reasoning, planning, organization. And some of them, they are more, they use a more multi-component, so they work on different aspects of cognition at the same time. And research has shown that some of this program, it does promote neuronal change in the brain. And there's also some research that has demonstrated that some of these programs, the effects can last up to 10 years. So it shows that, you know, doing some forms of this training, some of these effects, maybe you're gonna be scoring better on a memory test 10 years later, or you know, an attentional test 10 years later. But even though, I think the important message is that even though we have found some effects that lasts for a couple of years, this is not an intervention that we're gonna say we're gonna do for 1 month, for 2 months, and the effect is gonna last for the rest of my life, right? Like when we go to the gym and we need to exercise, so we need to do that constantly. So the best approach is really an approach that we can incorporate into our lifestyles, that we can really continue doing in our daily tasks, in our daily routine. So what are the of cognitively stimulating programs? I'm going to show you some of them. I'm going to go into a little bit more of detail, but some of them I'm just going to briefly mention. I try to bring, you know, different programs that have been used. There is not, again, a one-size-fits-all approach. I'm not recommending any of these programs over the others, but I just want to show to you some of these programs that are already there in the market and that has been shown to provide some level of cognitive stimulation. So there are these computer-based cognitive training programs. So these programs like Luminosity, Brain HQ, which was the former Posit Science, and I'm sure that you might know many other, you know, programs that exist over there. It shows that some of these programs, it has some benefits in improving some of the cognitive skills. What we need to be careful is that whenever we have all this market, right? Because these companies, they really found ways like to promote this and saying that it prevents Alzheimer's disease, you're gonna change your life, you're gonna keep your brain sharp. So there are some benefits, but we just need to be careful and really make sure that we have some scientific base for these interventions. We have used the Brain HQ in some of our research, and it's a training that we're going to talk a little bit about, and it has been shown some positive results. But we need to be careful in terms of how much of this training do I need to do. Just doing this training is going to work. We know that's not going to work. To change our lives, to stimulate our brains solely by doing this. So it's really important that we keep this multi-level approach. But even though some of these programs, it provides some benefits. So this is different that the off-the-shelf video games. When I started doing research with these video games, so I used to go to the store to buy, you know, the video games, the consoles. But now these games, they are, in applications, so you can play in your phone, in your tablet, and so on. And we're going to talk about one particular video game that I have used. So the difference between these computer-based games and these off-the-shelf video games is that these computer-based games, they were designed to train specific skills. They are designed to train your attention, specific aspects of attention, specific aspects of training, of memory, while these off-the-shelf video games, they were developed by fun, right? To be fun and for entertainment. But we have conducted some research using these games that are fun, and we also found some benefits on them. So we also have some other studies that looked at some learning strategies. The ACTIVE study was a very large study in the United States. These are the study that found some lasting effects up to 10 years. There is the MEMO training, which is a memory training tool, which was developed by Dr. Sylvie Belleville from the CRIUGM, and many others. The challenge that we have sometimes with all these games and these programs, these trainings that we do in research in the lab, is that sometimes it takes a long time to find the market, to get into the market. And sometimes this is a challenge. So really finding ways that we can bring, these more scientific-based trainings to the market. Sometimes it's a bit of a challenge, but we are also trying to address that with our research. And also other programs like participating social activities, volunteer, leisure activities, and the ENGAGE program. So the ENGAGE program is another program that we are going to talk a little bit right now. So we're going to look at two examples, more in-depth examples of these trainings and of these cognitive stimulating programs that we have used. So the first one is the REVIVA study, which was a study that was focused on visual attention. And in this study, participants, they committed to 3 months home-based program. So they did this program at home. So they went to the lab to learn how to play. It was games, different games. They went to the lab to learn. And then they spent 3 months at home playing these games. So there are 3 different groups. So one used the Brain HQ, the other an off-the-shelf video game, and then we had a control group. And they were asked to play for 5 hours a week for a total of 6 hours of training. So what does the training look like? So this is an example of a training of the Brain HQ. And this was, it was actually popular with our participants. So in this training, this is an attention training. You need to divide your attention between different things on the screen. And in this, you have, different like spikes on the screen, and you need to find a bird. So you're gonna have a number of birds in the screen, and one of the birds, it's gonna be different than the others, and you need to find it. So, if you can look at, there is one bird there among these, have I think 8 birds. So one of them is different than the others, right? If you haven't found, is the one on the top, mostly on the top. So the way this brain works, like these birds, it flashes on the screen very fast, so it doesn't stay there for you to search. It just flashes for some milliseconds, and then you need to click on where you found these different birds. So the game, it adapts to your level. So if you find it harder, it slows down, and then as you improve, it starts to go a little bit faster. Another example of this game, so it's another aspect of attention. So we have these jewels that, it floats on the screen, and then it is hidden by these bubbles that continues floating on the screen, and then it stops, and you need to click on the bubbles where you thought that the jewels were hidden. So these are, the types of games of the Brain HQ training that we have used. So this is one example of the computer-based game. So this game, it was really developed to train specific attention skills. On the other hand, we have this other game. So this is one example of what we call the off-the-shelf video games. This is a crazy taxi game, and you can find, it's free. I believe it's free, that you can play on your phone or your tablet. And the idea is that you are driving the city, and you need to pick up passengers and drop them off at their destination as fast as you can, while trying to avoid collision with other cars. So it's very fast. So when we think about, in this study, we are really focusing on attention. There are certain characteristics of games, certain characteristics of these trainings that really is set to improve your visual skills. So it was interesting that in both games, the computer-based game and in the video game, we did find some improvement. So we found improvement in attention skills. We found a faster performance on everyday tasks, so completion of everyday tasks is a little bit faster, and was also, interestingly, an improvement in depression score. So this was something that we did not expect, but mood and depression, it seems that improved after the training. So the other example that I'd like to give to you is the Engage program. So this is a little bit different. So it's more of a multi-component program. So this study is led by Dr. Sylvie Belleville from the Institut de Gériatrie, and it's underway. So we have different types of memory and attention training, and then we have some stimulating leisure activities as well. Learning a new language, playing a new instrument. So there are different aspects. So this study is an example of this multi-component approach for brain stimulation, for engaging your brain that we have found. So this is a study that's underway, and we have been also trying to find ways that, when the study is over, we can also implement it in community settings. We can make it available to the community as well. But how about crossword puzzles? So this is a question that I get a lot when I give this type of presentations. So I had a lady one time that went to this lecture, and she just laughed. She said, I already do crossword puzzles, so I don't need to do all this. So crossword puzzle it seems that it's, a very popular type of game. But what happened with crossword puzzle is that it really works on our verbal abilities. Verbal abilities, it tends to increase as we grow older. So the crossword puzzle, it doesn't really provide the same level of engagement, the same level of learning that we need for this type of effects to happen, for this engagement in the brain to happen. In the other study that we did, the REVIVA study, which was very interesting, was that we had participants from 65 to 85 years old, I believe. And sometimes the participants, they get there and they say, there's no way I'm gonna learn how to do this. There is the computer, there's all these buttons. There is, for the off-the-shelf video game, there is really like a console. There's like buttons and like a joystick. And, but we prepared, we didn't just give them all this training and ask them to go home. So we really prepared a manual guide, a training to make sure that they felt comfortable with that. And it was interesting that the participants, after they finished the program, they wanted to keep playing the games, because they wanted sometimes the research assistants to go to their homes to play the game. They want to learn to play with their grandkids, so they want to invite their grandkids to play. But these are also, there was this learning that happened. So the games that works, the trainings that usually works, are that ones that sometimes when we start to say, I'm not sure I can do this, because it seems that it's very hard. But as you go along, if there is really a manual, if there is really a strategy, like a training that can prepare you, so these are the types of training that really works. We're going to quickly touch base on some of the other components of, how to stay actively engaged, healthy balance and diet. It's not my expertise area, but this is also important to focus. Stay active, so physical activity, it's also very important. And even better is if we can do some activities that can engage both your brain and your body at the same time, like dancing, learning how to play a new sport. So these are activities that they have double benefits. Prevent risk of falls at home. The prevention is not going to keep you actively engaged, but by not falling, you're going to be able to be engaged in these activities for as long as possible, because the risk of fall, it can bring a lot of consequences. So these are also things that we need to keep in mind. We need to pay attention. Another important component that I believe is really this positive approach to aging. So just thinking about what's really my attitude towards aging. Am I open to learn new experiences? Do I believe that aging is also a time for learning? Or I believe that, I'm already too old to learn new things. I'm already too old to start a new hobby or a new sport. We found that people that are really open to these new experiences, they engage more, they benefit more from this type of programs, from this type of interventions. So unfortunately, we know that there are some declines that happens when we grow older, and some of the things we cannot control, but there are other things that we can control, that we can change. So some of the things, it's on our hands to do it. And it starts with our own attitudes towards aging. So it's important to review my attitudes towards aging, right? Is aging just about decline, or is aging also about growth, about learning, and so on? So I think, I'd like to keep some time for questions, but the key message that I want to leave is stay motivated, stay curious, and keep learning. So this level of curiosity to always learn new things, it's very important as we grow older. I know that there are challenges that comes in the way. Now we are living really a time that it's very challenging, but thinking about ways that we can overcome that, thinking about small things that can keep us motivated, even if it's using technology, adapting to all these changes. It's very important. So the idea is to die young as late as possible. So thank you very much. I know that this talk, it was very broad. So my goal was really to show you different ways that you can engage your brain. I'm gonna have some time. We have some time for questions, but if you ever like to reach me with more specific questions, or later on if other questions comes up, I'll be very happy to answer. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? I'll just wait a moment. Does anybody have any questions? Someone would like to know, has a question here. It says, what about Learning Bridge?
Mm-hmm. So I think this goes a little bit in terms of we need to know what's your previous experience. Of course, even when I talked about crossword puzzle, it doesn't also mean that you can even have fun. It can be an entertainment. So you should keep doing, right? I just needed to highlight that maybe the benefits is not going to do the same. So bridge, it's going to be different if it's something that you are learning for, you played your entire life, or it has been, that's kind of automatic to you, because there are some things in our lives, it just becomes automatic, right? Or am I learning for the first time? I don't know bridge, this is a new game and I'm gonna learn now. So the benefits is going to be different. So every time that we challenge our brain, we start to learn new things that we didn't know before, that's where we have most benefits.
Perfect. And we have another question here. Someone would like to know, is there scientific proof that playing these games can save your brain?
I think that saves your brain, it's a big statement. No, there is no scientific proof that playing these games saves your brain. There are proofs that some of these games or some of these interventions, it helps you stay, keep your brain sharper for a long time. And I think that we need to be, like when we talk about staying sharp or keeping our brain sharp, so what we're really talking about, right? We are really talking about finding ways that we can do our activities, that we can do our occupations for as long as possible, like, independently, for a long time. So what happened is that these games, it helps to, or some of this training, so different games and trainings will have different benefits, but what the research has shown is that some of these trainings and this engagement, it's going to be able to engage your brain for longer, meaning that you might be able to be independent for longer, keep doing your activities that you love doing for a longer time. There are some claims that these types of games, and a lot of media saying that they can prevent Alzheimer's disease, that they can prevent dementia. In that way, there is no scientific proof that they are going to prevent dementia. We could talk about maybe delay the onset, delay the beginning of the disease with some of this stimulation, but it's not really going to save your brain. So if we really want, the best approach is, to exercise, to eat healthy, and keep learning, stay engaged in activities with our family, with our friends. During this, pandemic, if we can find ways, it's hard for everyone, but even with the internet, with Zoom, if we can find ways to keep connected, that's important.
Yeah, let me go here. So we have a question in French. It says, comment s'investir dans de nouvelles expériences pendant cette période qui nous mine le moral?
I think that's a very good question, and that's a question that I've been involved with other research, that the goal is really not to do brain training, but really to engage. And I know that some community organizations, they do have different programs that they are offering. I know the Alzheimer's education, Alzheimer's group, they have some activities, the Alzheimer's Society, Coming Center. So these are all community organizations that they are trying to deal with this, to find ways that we can still, keep engaged and keep our moral up, because it has been hard to everyone. So I'd recommend, if anybody, maybe you already are connected with these organizations, but they are really offering a lot of nice programs as well. I go to we have with the Alzheimer's Society of Montreal, and we are doing some research on that aspect as well.
So we have another question here. I think it's in reference to the previous question. Are there scientific proof that playing games saves your brain? How about if they continue to learn? Could that help kind of save the brain?
Yes, it helps. What we can't say for sure is that by keep learning, it's gonna prevent me from having dementia or prevent me from having Alzheimer's disease. So this we can't, but it really, because as I mentioned, every time we do like this learning, this cognitive training, it creates new connections on our brains. So in a way, we make our brains stronger to deal with any of these effects that happens. So our brain will be better equipped to deal with this. And also, which is it's harder, is that, again, there's no one size fits all approach. For some people, it might work better. Some trainings might work best. But the key really is to stay engaged, keep learning, keep motivated. And if you're having problems during this pandemic, sometimes we feel like depressed, we feel sad. If you can reach to some of these organizations, they have very nice programs. They are offering a lot of help there. You can also reach me on my email address, and I can reach you. I can put you in touch with different resources.
Perfect. So I have another question here. Someone would like to know about mixing cognitive stimulation and exercise. Is there evidence for a combined approach?
Yeah, so what we're going to have with this combined approach is that we're going to have, the benefit is going to be double, because we also know that exercising also helps our brain, also helps with all these connections. So it's very important to keep, as much as we can, to continue doing some exercise along with the other strategies or the other programs. We need to do this combination approach. We really need to look at this from this holistic perspective.
Perfect. So then the next one says, which is better, Brain HQ or Lumosity? I find continuous learning or lifelong learning very stimulating.
Yes, I'm very happy to hear. I think just, this attitude also of finding it very stimulating. I'm sure by having this attitude, right, we are always going to be looking at new things and learning new things. In terms of which one is better, I'm not familiar with any research that has compared both programs. I know that there has been a lot of research about luminosity as well. So I think that both programs, it has its benefit as well. So it also depends, if you're doing these exercises, what other aspects in your life that you are changing as well. And I think both could have, but I really do not have, I am not familiar with any study that has compared both of them.
Perfect. So then this one says, what can I do now since I can't continue my salsa and guitar lessons due to COVID?
Yes, so it's a good question. So that's what in some of these organizations, I know in some of our studies, we are trying to partner with the Grand Ballet in order to find ways that we can continue doing some of these movements and some of these dance. Not specifically salsa, I don't think, but there are other, other ways. But maybe if you can just, dance in your living room also by yourself. Sometimes that's what I do. To dance and enjoy it at home if you're by yourself or somebody else. And the guitar lessons, I'm not sure if it's possible to also do some remote learning. I know that some of the professors, they have adapted to this. So I think one of the key messages for success or engage during this pandemic is really being open to adapt, being open to use technology, and finding new ways that we can continue doing these activities. So again, I believe there are some of these programs like dancing, maybe music, that has been conducted by some community organizations. So I would suggest you to reach to some of them, or you can reach me, and I can redirect you to some of these resources. So there's a lot of people, not only researchers, but also from community organizations that are really tackling this problem. We do understand, that's really hard. But we are trying to find ways that we can address. And usually the community organizations, they are they are in the upfront, so they are trying different things to address this.
Perfect. Are there any other questions? Just wait a moment.
So yeah, so is the next step is to engage, and find new ways to adapt and to the new situation and engage.
Okay. So thank you so much, Dr. Belchior, for this fantastic presentation, and thank you to everybody who signed up today. We would love it if you guys would attend. We have another event. It's a fitness event this Thursday. It's an exercise class with Juliana Guerrero. We'd love to see everyone there and taking part. I've put in the chat box, I'll put it again. It's a link to our Eventbrite page. You can sign up for any other event that we're hosting. For the rest of this month and for November. I've also put down the link, down in the chat box, a link to our YouTube channel in case you've missed an event and you'd like to watch it, or maybe you just want to go back and get some more information about the events that you've already attended. And I've also put in the chat box the link to just a little brief survey. We would love to hear your feedback about today's event or any other event that you've attended. So thank you so much to everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.